Standardization of tank components was an objective the German army sluggishly pursued both before and during the war. Particular attention was given to the Panzer III and IV, which were the primary striking force of early to mid-war panzer divisions. The idea of combining elements from both tanks into a single vehicle was attempted on a few occasions by the Germans even before the outbreak of the war, with minimal success. This concept resurfaced in 1944 with the proposal of a new vehicle that aimed to combine various components of the Panzer III and Panzer IV. Commonly referred to today as the Panzer III/IV, this hybrid design was intended to be the final product of this fusion effort. However, the project was short-lived. After only a few months, it was cancelled due to insufficient time and resources for full-scale implementation. One might question the rationale of pursuing such a project so late in the war, especially when both the Panzer III and Panzer IV were arguably outdated by 1945, the year the Panzer III/IV was supposed to enter production. Nonetheless, this decision reflects the broader pattern of German wartime priorities, often marked by ambitious yet impractical ventures. In early German tank development, the military opted to design two distinct types of tanks, each intended for a specific role on a battlefield. One was tasked with engaging enemy armor and was thus equipped with a gun capable of penetrating opposing tanks' defenses. The other was designed to provide fire support, targeting fortified enemy positions such as artillery emplacements, machine gun nests, and anti-tank defenses. These roles were fulfilled by the Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks, both of which during the early stages of the war performed well in their intended capacities. However, by 1941, the situation changed drastically. The Germans faced new Soviet tanks that outclassed their existing designs in both firepower and armor protection. While advanced tanks like the Tiger and Panther were already in development, they were still far from being combat-ready. In the meantime, the panzer forces in the field urgently needed a solution. The only viable short-term option was to rearm the existing Panzer III and IV tanks. Soon, both received longer-barreled guns of the same caliber as their previous models. This modification, along with the introduction of new ammunition, significantly improved tanks' anti-armor performance. Another aspect that required improvement was the armor. While the flat frontal plates of both tanks would be thickened over time, combat experience against the Soviet T-34 demonstrated the superiority of sloped armor in stopping and deflecting incoming rounds. The concept of angled armor was not new to German engineers, who had already employed it on armored cars. However, flat armor was initially preferred for tanks due to its simpler manufacturing process and better internal ergonomics. With the threat from the ever-improving enemy anti-tank weapons becoming a growing concern, ideas of incorporating angled frontal plates for German tanks came as an obvious solution. By 1942, the development of the Panzer III had essentially reached its limits, prompting German engineers to focus on improving the Panzer IV. One proposed upgrade involved the introduction of a new superstructure constructed using angled armor plates for improved protection. In late 1942, Krupp engineers proposed a design incorporating this feature, and plans were made to implement it on the Ausf.A variant. However, by early 1943, the project was cancelled due to concerns that the added weight would overburden the chassis, as well as fears that incorporating the new designs would significantly delay the production of the Panzer IV, which was undergoing an urgent production ramp-up at the time. Despite the cancellation of this project, efforts to improve the Panzer IV continued. Although production of the Panzer III was discontinued by 1943, the production of the Sturmgeschütz III, which utilized the same chassis, was still going strong. Therefore, a new focus was placed on standardizing parts between the Panzer III and IV, as consolidating the two designs into a single vehicle offered several advantages such as reducing production costs and increasing the availability of spare parts. The Germans had attempted such standardization even before the outbreak of the war, and while some progress has been made, it was limited. This partial standardization was limited to several components such as the turret shape, vision ports, machine gun ball mount, and other minor parts. However, these changes had little impact on overall production costs. Major components like the hull, superstructure, transmission, and suspension were not interchangeable, preventing full standardization. In 1937, under the direction of the German Army's Ordnance Department, responsible for designing tanks and other motorized vehicles, Krupp attempted to merge the Panzer IV Ausf.C with the nearly developed Panzer III Ausf.E's torsion bar suspension. However, the latter faced significant production and development delays, ultimately leading to the abandonment of the project. This, however, was not the end of the story. In 1943, components from both tanks were utilized to develop a new chassis designated as the Geschutzwagen 3/4. This chassis would later be used for the construction of two famous vehicles, the Hume self-propelled artillery and Nashorn self-propelled anti-tank vehicle. In early 1944, seeking to further improve standardization, Karl Otto Sauer, a member of Albert Speer's Ministry of Armaments and Munitions, initiated the development of the Panzer III/4 project. The goal was once again to combine components from both the Panzer III and IV into a single chassis, but to a greater extent. For example, the project planned to integrate the turret, modified chassis, and engine of the Panzer IV with the steering gear, transmission, and final drives from the Panzer III. Additionally, the design included a new suspension system and an upper superstructure with sloped armor. This vehicle was designated as the Panzerkampfwagen auf Einheitsfahrgestell 3/4 Ausf.A. The term Einheitsfahrgestell means standard chassis, while Ausf.A, short for Ausführung, meaning variant or version, indicated that this model was intended as a foundation for future variants yet to be developed. In many modern sources, both in literature and online, it is often simply referred to as the Panzer III/4. For the sake of simplicity and my own sanity, this designation will be used throughout the video. The Panzer III/4 project was one of those obscure late-war efforts about which little is known. In general, sources providing detailed information on it are scarce. The limited sources available and few drawings at least give us an indication of its estimated performance. The Panzer III/4 chassis shared its overall layout with other German tank designs. The front part of the hull housed the transmission, followed by the crew compartment and the engine. The front hull, where the transmission and steering systems were located, was fully enclosed, providing protection to the vital components housed within. According to the few available drawings, the transmission and steering brake inspection hatches appear to have been removed. The upper part of the hull, where the two steering brake inspection hatches were originally positioned, was slightly raised. The Panzer III/4 was to be powered by the unchanged Maybach HL-120 TRM, delivering 265 horsepower at 2,600 RPM. The engine was paired with the SSG-77 transmission, along with the improved final drives and steering mechanisms borrowed from the Panzer III. The fuel capacity was increased by an additional 300 liters, though some sources do not specify whether it utilized the 470 liters from the Panzer IV Ausf.H or the 680 liters from the Ausf.J. In either case, the additional fuel load would have significantly extended the operational range of the Panzer III/4. This increased fuel capacity is somewhat ironic, as German engineers were boosting fuel loads at a time when fuel itself was becoming an increasingly scarce commodity in Germany. Unfortunately, details of the overall driving performance are not mentioned in the available sources. The Panzer III/4 was to be equipped with a new suspension system featuring 6 660mm or 25.9-inch diameter road wheels. These wheels were mounted in pairs and suspended using simple leaf springs. While this suspension type was not the most advanced, it was affordable and easy to replace. The front drive sprocket was borrowed from the Panzer III, while the rear idler was a modified version of the Panzer IV design featuring an improved adjustment mechanism. The centrally guided tracks were 540mm or 21.8 inches wide. Additionally, there were 3 return rollers, likely sourced from the Panzer IV. Due to rubber shortages, both the road wheels and return rollers were made of metal. While it is unclear if the Panzer III/4 was ever completed, even as a mock-up or as a prototype, it is known that its suspension system was developed. One of the earlier Panzer IV suspension designs consisted of 6 road wheels suspended using torsion bars mounted on a Krupp Begleitwagen BW2, a pre-war prototype. Additionally, the self-propelled artillery vehicle known as Geschusswagen 4B, armed with the 10.5 cm, employed a similar 6-wheel suspension system. The suspension intended for the Panzer III/IV was actually constructed and tested on one of the Geschusswagen 3/4 vehicles, although it was not adopted for service. It is unclear if there were any issues with it. However, the fact that it was considered for use for this project suggests that it likely functioned as intended. Its superstructure was constructed from 4 angled armored plates. These plates were interlocked and then welded, which simplified construction while also providing stronger structural integrity. The existing drawings only depict the driver's vision port, with no additional features shown. To expedite development, the turret was directly adapted from the late Panzer IV models. By the latter stages of the war, with the addition of armored skirts, the turret's side vision ports had been removed. The overall turret design remained unchanged. Since the turret was based on the Panzer IV Ausf.J's, it probably lacked the auxiliary engine that powered its rotation mechanisms. Consequently, the crew would have had to manually rotate the turret. It was to be equipped with the same 7.5 cm or 2.95-inch L-48 gun that was used on the later variants of the Panzer IV. This gun was highly effective and capable of engaging most Allied tanks until the end of the war. Interestingly, the Panzer III/IV required an increase in ammunition storage for the main gun from 87 rounds in the original Panzer IV to 100 rounds. It remains unclear how these additional rounds would have been stored, considering the vehicle's cramped interior, which was further constrained by the use of angled armor. Also, akin to the fuel situation, the increase in ammunition capacity may have been an unrealistic expectation, given the chronic ammunition shortages faced by Germany in 1945 when the Panzer III/IV was expected to enter service. The secondary armament comprised at least one 7.92 mm or 0.31-inch MG-34 machine gun. Both the Panzer III and Panzer IV had one machine gun mounted in the hull and another coaxially in the turret, alongside the main gun. Existing drawings of the Panzer III/IV depicted the vehicle without the hull-mounted machine gun. It is unclear whether there were plans to add this weapon or not. However, if the whole machine gun was omitted and a radio operator's position was deleted, the increase in ammunition count and fuel capacity might be explained. By 1944, some German armored vehicles were equipped with the Nahverteidigungswaffe, or in English, the close-range defense weapon, which was a small grenade thrower mounted on top of the turret. It is uncertain whether this weapon was planned for the Panzer III/IV, but it likely would have been planned and installed, if available. Thanks to its thick, angled armor, the Panzer III/IV would have boasted robust protection. The front hull was 60 mm or 2.36 inches thick and sloped at 60 degrees, while the upper glacis had the same thickness but was angled at 45 degrees. The driver's plate, angled at 50 degrees, was 80 mm or 3.14 inches thick. To reduce weight, the superstructure sides and rear were significantly lighter, with armor only 30 mm or 1.18 inches thick and sloped at 36 degrees. The turret armor remained largely unchanged. The front was 50 mm or 1.96 inches thick, while the sides were 30 mm thick. Additionally, 5 mm or 0.19 inches thick armored skirts were added to defend against anti-tank rifles. The number of crew, while not specified in the sources, likely consisted of 4 to 5 men. The driver would have sat on the left side of the hull. The radio operator was usually positioned to his right, but it is not clear if he was retained on the Panzer III/IV. The remaining crew, including the commander, gunner, and loader, were seated behind them in the turret. There were numerous proposals and projects aimed at modifying the Panzer III/IV chassis into various self-propelled variants, intended to serve either anti-tank or artillery roles. One such example was the Panzer IV/70E, which combined the Panzer III/IV's lower hull and suspension system with a modified Jagdpanzer IV's superstructure. equipped with a 7.5cm L-70 gun. However, this project was ultimately abandoned near the end of 1944. Additionally, there were several proposals to mount 10.5cm or 15cm howitzers inside a rotating turret on the Panzer III/IV's chassis, though these ideas never progressed beyond the design stage. In March 1944, an order was given for the production of 3 prototype units. There was a great optimism surrounding this project, and by June 1944, a decision was made to begin full-scale production in early 1945. However, the reality check was quickly coming. Given the chaotic state of German industry at the time, adopting yet another chassis was out of the question. The industry was barely able to maintain production of the existing vehicles, so there were simply no additional resources available for this new project. Consequently, in July 1944, work on the project was officially halted. It remains unclear from the sources whether the 3 ordered prototypes were ever partially or fully assembled, and no work has been done on them until the end of the war. This concludes our video on the German Panzer III/IV. What are your thoughts on this late-war proposal? Did they hold any merit in pursuing the development of a new vehicle based on components that were already outdated by the time it was slated for production? Share your opinions in the comments section below. If you haven't done so already, we invite you to subscribe to stay updated on future content. If you'd like to contribute further, consider supporting us on Patreon or PayPal. We want to especially thank our medium and heavy tank Patreon supporters: Alex Harvey, Dan Fitzpatrick, Dave Shuford, Leslie Holkauer, Michael Herman, Owen M., Peter Bradbury, and Wolfhund. Until next time, keep us in your sights.